Versailles, France. The year is 1684, and you are standing in the most expensive room in Europe. It is a gallery longer than a football field, and it is on fire with light. Thousands of candle flames are burning down its length, and not one of them is allowed to shine only once. Every flame is caught and doubled and thrown back at you by a wall of glass that runs the entire length of the hall. 357 mirrors. In an age when a single decent mirror could cost more than a painting by a master, the King of France has lined a whole corridor with them, edge to edge, for exactly one reason: to prove that he can. Ambassadors are marched through this room on purpose. The idea is to make a foreign visitor feel small and dazzled and outgunned before he ever reaches the throne at the far end. This is the Galerie des Glaces, the Hall of Mirrors. And when it opens, it is the single greatest display of wealth on the face of the earth. Here is the part they tend to leave off the tour. Almost every mirror on that wall is, in plain terms, stolen. The secret behind them was smuggled out of another country by bribery and betrayal. Men were threatened for it. Families were locked in prison over it. And more than a few workers, according to the accounts of the time, simply started dying. There is an older nickname for this beautiful room, and you will not find it on the postcards. Some people call it the Hall of Bloody Mirrors. And that is the thing about mirrors. You have one within arm's reach right now, probably several, and you think of it as the most harmless object you own. A bathroom fixture, a thing in your bag, background. It is not background. The mirror is one of the most consequential objects our species has ever made. It rewired our art. It bent the course of science. It changed, quite literally, how you think about the face looking back at you. And it did all of that while leaving behind a long, quiet trail of poisoned lungs, ruined minds, and the occasional assassin. For 8,000 years, human beings have been chasing their own reflection. This is the story of what that chase cost us and what it made us. But the story of the mirror does not begin in a French palace. It begins in a grave, in what is now Turkey, roughly 8,000 years ago. There is a place called Çatalhöyük. 9,000 years ago, it was one of the first towns human beings ever built. A dense honeycomb of mud brick houses packed so tightly together that people walked across the rooftops and dropped down into their homes through holes in the ceiling. And when archaeologists dug into the floors of those houses, they found something waiting underneath: the dead. The people of Çatalhöyük buried their loved ones directly beneath the rooms where they slept. And tucked in beside some of those bodies, they found mirrors. Not glass, obsidian, volcanic glass, black as deep water, ground and polished by hand over untold hours until the surface gave back a dark, clear reflection. To this day, only around 56 of these obsidian mirrors have ever been found, almost all of them in that one small corner of the ancient world. They are, as far as we know, the oldest manufactured mirrors on the planet. Now, notice where they end up. Not on a wall, in a grave. Sit with what that means. Before we ever used a mirror to check our hair, we used it to send something with the dead. The very first thing human beings did with a reflection was treat it as sacred as a doorway, as a fragment of the soul you could hold in your hand. Keep that in your back pocket, because it never really goes away. The idea that your reflection is not just an image, but a piece of you is older than writing, older than the wheel, older than almost everything. It is why, for thousands of years, and across dozens of cultures, people would cover the mirrors in a house the moment someone died, so the soul could not be caught, or the dead could not stare back. It is why vampires, in the old stories, cast no reflection at all, because a creature with no soul has nothing for the mirror to hold. Long before it was a tool, the mirror was a haunted object, a grave good, a window you weren't always sure you wanted to look through. For the next several thousand years, the mirror climbs out of the grave and into the hands of the living, and it does it by way of metal. As soon as human beings learn to smelt and polish copper, they notice the obvious thing. A sheet of bright metal, buffed hard enough, throws back a face. In the river valleys of Mesopotamia, people were making polished copper mirrors around 6,000 years ago. The Egyptians picked it up about 1,000 years after that, and they fell hard. To an Egyptian, a round, gleaming mirror was a little captured piece of the sun, tied to the goddess Hathor herself. They made them out of polished bronze, gave them handles shaped like lotus flowers and human figures. And you already know where this is going. They buried them with their dead, 5,000 years later, still chasing the exact same idea they had at Çatalhöyük. The reflection follows you into the next world. Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, Chinese bronze workers were turning the mirror into something close to an art form and something close to a religion, casting the backs with dragons and star maps and using them to ward off evil and to read the future. A mirror in ancient China was not for vanity. It was for protection, for divination, for keeping the dark things out. But here is the catch, and it is a big one. For all their beauty, all these mirrors were terrible at the one job we now take completely for granted. Polished bronze reflects only about 1/5 of the light that hits it, 1/5, which means that for thousands of years, when a person looked into the very finest mirror money could buy, what looked back was dim, warped, gold-tinted, and vague. A smudge of a face floating in a brown fog. There is a famous line in the New Testament, in the first letter to the Corinthians, about seeing through a glass, darkly. We quote it like poetry. It isn't poetry, it's a product review. That murky, half-lost image is literally what it was like to look at yourself for most of human history. Now, somewhere around 2,000 years ago, someone finally lands on the idea that changes everything. Back the reflection with glass. The Roman writer Pliny the Elder, writing around 77 AD, describes glassmakers in the city of Sidon in what is now Lebanon coating blown glass with lead and gold to make mirrors. Glass over metal. That is the fundamental recipe of every single mirror in your home today. And the Romans had it 2,000 years ago. And then, nothing. Here is the part that should genuinely frustrate you. That brilliant idea goes basically nowhere for more than 1,000 years. Roman glass was cloudy and full of bubbles. Their method, blowing a bubble of glass and cutting a curved sliver out of it, produced tiny, distorted mirrors that bent your face like a carnival funhouse. For actually seeing yourself, they were worse than a good metal disc. So the world shrugged and went back to polished bronze and steel. Through the fall of Rome and the entire span of the Middle Ages, the best mirrors on Earth were, once again, just buffed sheets of metal. And your reflection stayed exactly where it had always been. Dark, distant, just out of reach. The Romans invented the glass mirror. They simply had no idea what they were holding. They had the future in their hands, and they set it down and walked away. The breakthrough, the real one, happens on a small island in a lagoon. By the late 1200s, Venice is the richest trading power in Europe, and its glassmakers are the best in the world. They are also, frankly, a walking fire hazard. Their furnaces roar day and night in a city built almost entirely out of wood. So in the year 1291, the Venetian government makes a decision that will echo for centuries. It orders every glassmaker in Venice to pack up and move to a single island just to the north, an island called Murano. Officially, this is about fire safety. Unofficially, it is the world's first high-security industrial campus. On Murano, the glassmakers can be watched, contained, and their secrets, the sand, the salt, the exact tricks of the trade can be locked down tight on an island nobody can slip off of without being noticed. And around the year 1507, on that island, two brothers, the Del Gallo brothers, secure a 20-year monopoly on a brand new kind of mirror. This is the invention that ends the long dark age of the smudged face. They take a flat sheet of clear glass and they back it not with lead, but with a shining amalgam of tin and mercury, laid down so smooth and so bright that the reflection leaps out at you, clear, true, silver. For the first time in 8,000 years, a human being can look into a manufactured surface and see themselves the way you and I see ourselves right now. Sharp, honest, real. The world absolutely loses its mind. Because these Venetian mirrors are to put it gently, expensive. A large one could cost more than a painting by a master. The accounts say a truly grand mirror could run as much as an entire naval warship. And no, that is not a figure of speech. That is a comparison people actually made at the time and wrote down. A mirror for the price of a warship. Kings and queens across Europe are frantic for them, and Venice is sitting on the only supply on the planet. So Venice does what any power squatting on a gold mine does. It guards the secret with everything it has. The master mirror makers of Murano are handed a genuinely wonderful life, high social status, excellent money, even the right to marry into the nobility. And in exchange, they are never, under any circumstances, allowed to leave. To carry the secret of the mirror out of the Republic was treason, punishable by death. The Gilded Island was, at the end of the day, still a cage. If a 500-year-old story about locked islands, stolen glass, and assassins is exactly the kind of thing you want more of, do me a favor right now and hit subscribe. This whole channel runs on strange histories like this one, and there are a lot more of them coming. And here is where we can finally clear up something you have believed your entire life. You know the superstition. Break a mirror, get 7 years of bad luck. Everyone knows it. Almost nobody knows where it comes from, and the real answer is so much better than the myth. Part of it is ancient. The Romans believed the human body and its fortunes renewed themselves in cycles of 7 years. So a shattered reflection meant 7 broken years for a broken you. But the reason the superstition truly dug in and spread across Europe is far more down to earth. When a mirror costs as much as a warship, breaking one is not a metaphysical problem. It's a financial catastrophe. If you are a servant in a great house and you dropped your master's Venetian mirror, the debt that landed on your shoulders could very easily take you about 7 years to work off. The curse was real. It was just a bill. The bad luck was the money you now owed. Now the register of this story has to change, because we need to talk about how these miraculous mirrors were actually made. And it is grim. Remember that shining backing the tin and the mercury? To lay it down, a worker would spread out a delicate sheet of tinfoil and then flood it with liquid mercury, pools of it, quicksilver, running loose and heavy across the table. Then they would slide a plate of glass over the top and press down, squeezing the excess mercury out at the edges, leaving a thin, gleaming, poisonous skin of metal bonded to the back of the glass. A single large mirror could take a month to cure, breathing out invisible fumes the entire time. Here is what they did not understand. Mercury is a slow, patient poison, and its vapor is completely invisible. The men who made the most beautiful objects in Europe spent their days hunched over open pools of it, in closed, unventilated rooms, breathing it in with every breath, and it took them apart. It started in the hands, a tremor they could not stop, fingers shaking so badly they could barely work. Then came the sleeplessness, the teeth loosening and falling out of the gums, the drooling, the black moods, the paranoia, the memory going soft and then going all together, young men's minds coming apart while their bodies were still strong. Doctors of the era had a name for the affliction, and it described precisely what everyone could see. A person being slowly, quietly driven mad by a metal. Picture one of them, a master craftsman on Murano, maybe 40 years old, the best in the world at what he does, respected, well paid, the pride of his family, and his hands won't stop shaking. He can't remember his children's names by evening. He wakes at 3 in the morning, convinced someone is in the room. He is dying by inches to make a duchess a mirror she will use to admire her own face, and neither of them has the faintest idea that the beautiful object passing between them is the thing killing him. They did not know they were poisoning themselves. They did the work anyway, one gorgeous, lethal sheet at a time for centuries. This is the part that should make you angry. And then there is what people were willing to do to steal it. By the 1660s, France is finished paying Venice's ransom prices. The finance minister to King Louis XIV, a cold, brilliant, relentless man named Jean-Baptiste Colbert, decides France will simply take the secret for itself. In the year 1665, French agents quietly bribe a handful of Murano's master craftsmen to slip out of Venice and come to Paris to teach the French how it is done. Venice's response reads like a thriller. The Republic, according to the accounts, sends its agents after the runaways. It throws their families into prison back home to force them to return. And then, in France, the defectors begin to die, mysteriously, one after another. Whether it was Venetian poison or simply the mercury doing what mercury always did, the sources of the time are certain of one thing. The Republic of Venice would rather see its runaway mirror makers dead than let their secret walk free across Europe. It did not work. The secret got out anyway. The French learned the craft, and then they surpassed it, figuring out how to cast mirrors larger and flatter and finer than Venice ever had. And they poured all that stolen, blood-soaked knowledge into a single, staggering room built to show the entire world exactly what France could now do. That room, of course, is where we started, the Hall of Mirrors, 357 of them gleaming down the length of the gallery at Versailles. Now you understand the nickname, the Hall of Bloody Mirrors. Every reflection in that golden corridor was bought with a stolen secret, a poisoned trade, and a quiet trail of bodies nobody wanted to count. For all of that, the mirror was still a rich person's toy. Right up into the 1800s, an ordinary human being might live an entire life having only ever glimpsed themselves in a scrap of dull metal or the surface of a puddle. And then, in the year 1835, a German chemist named Justus von Liebig ends the whole bloody saga with a bit of quiet chemistry. Liebig works out how to coat a sheet of glass with a microscopically thin, perfectly even layer of real silver, using nothing but a simple chemical reaction. No mercury, no poison, no month-long cure choking on invisible fumes, just a bright, cheap, brilliant mirror and a method you can scale up to a factory line. Almost overnight, the mirror stops being a treasure guarded by kings and becomes something a factory worker can hang on his own wall. For the first time in the entire history of our species, nearly everyone can see their own face clearly whenever they want. And here, stay with me, because this is the strangest idea in the whole story. Some historians think that quietly changed who we are. Think about it. For almost the entire span of human existence, most people barely knew what they looked like. Your sense of yourself came from the outside in, from your family, your village, your trade, your place in the order of things, the God above you. You were, first and foremost, a piece of a group. Then, suddenly, everyone owns a clear mirror. Everyone can study their own private, particular, individual face alone, in detail, every single day. The historian Ian Mortimer has argued that the spread of the cheap glass mirror helped give birth to the modern idea of the individual. The sense that you are a distinct, unique person with an inner self worth examining. It is not a coincidence, the argument goes, that the age of cheap mirrors is also the age that gives us the self-portrait, the private bedroom, the diary, the autobiography, a whole civilization turning for the first time to look hard at itself. We built the mirror to check our faces. It is entirely possible the mirror helped build the modern self. They weren't trying to reinvent what it means to be a person. They were doing it anyway, which brings us, at last, to right now. The mirror won, completely. It is so cheap and so utterly everywhere that it has turned invisible all over again. The bathroom, the car, the elevator, the shop window, the dark glass of the phone you might be holding this very second. All of it stitched together with reflective surfaces you never think about twice. The single most expensive object of the 17th century is now the thing you squint at with a mouthful of toothpaste. But here's the part that catches you off guard. The most important mirrors human beings have ever made are not pointed at us at all. They are pointed at the beginning of time. 1 million miles from Earth, there is a telescope called James Webb, and its eye is a mere 18 hexagonal segments of gold-coated metal unfolded out in the cold and the dark of space like a great golden flower. And all that gold, coating the most powerful telescope ever built by our species, weighs less than 2 ounces, less than a golf ball. With that whisper of gold on metal, we are catching light that has been traveling toward us for more than 13 billion years. Light from the first galaxies that ever formed. Light from almost the very beginning of everything. Sit with that for a second. The same basic act that started under a mud floor in ancient Turkey, polish a surface, catch the light, look, has become the way our species stares all the way back to the dawn of the universe. And that old, haunted feeling never fully left either. The next time you sit in front of what looks like an ordinary mirror in an interview room, remember that a one-way mirror is just a sheet of glass with a coating thin enough to see through from the dark side. Someone may be looking back through your reflection right now. The mirror as a window, the mirror as a watcher. 8,000 years later, it can still hold a piece of you that you didn't agree to give. We started by using a reflection to look at the dead. We are ending by using one to look at the birth of the cosmos, from a black stone in a grave to a sheet of gold in deep space. That is the whole climb. So the next time you catch your own eye in the mirror, remember what you are actually looking into. It buried the dead at Çatalhöyük. It gave the pharaohs their little captured sons. It sat dark and dim behind 1,000 years of polished bronze. It was reborn in fire on a locked island in Venice. It cost as much as a warship. It poisoned the men who made it. It was smuggled and stolen and paid for in blood and hung in gold down the length of a king's gallery. It taught a whole civilization how to see itself, and it now stares, unblinking, back at the edge of time. 8,000 years. All of it, so that a smudge of a face could finally become a clear one. Not bad. For the thing you used to check your teeth,